Okay, hey, it's Mr. Townsend here. I'm going to go over how to write a scientific paragraph. In specific, I'm going to look at this question here, which is talking about living conditions on the Moon and Earth. So it says here that the Earth and the Moon are both 150 million kilometers from the Sun. The Earth has a 23-degree tilt, that's its axis from the plane of orbit, and the Moon has no tilt. The Moon has a day that is 29.5 Earth days long, and the Earth's is 1 day long. The Moon has no atmosphere, and as we know, the Earth does have an atmosphere. So we want to write two paragraphs on two major conditions of life, temperature and light humans would need to consider if they went to live on the Moon. Right, so I'm just going to head the two major paragraphs here, temperature, and then I'm going to do the light one, light. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say about the temperature is I'm going to write a statement. The temperatures on the Moon will be more extreme than those on the Earth. Okay, so I might look up the facts and find this out. It's so it gets incredibly hot on the Moon in the middle of their day, and it gets very cold in the middle of their night. So I've put a statement down saying that the extreme temperature, the temperatures on the Moon will be more extreme than those on the Earth. But that might be true, but I'm not explaining why that's true. And part of scientific writing is explaining why something's true. So why is the Moon temperature so more extreme? So extreme means hotter and colder. So I'm going to say the reason the Moon gets a colder or has a more cold temperature, has a colder temperature than the Earth is. Okay, so what's the reasoning here? So I need to think about the factors that influence the temperature on the Earth and the Moon. So the first factor is how close we are to the Sun. In this case, we are the same distance away, the Earth and the Moon, from the Sun, so the intensity of the heat radiation from the Sun shouldn't be a factor in determining if the Earth or the Moon is hotter. So it's not to do with how much radiation reaches the Moon or the Earth, but it could be to do with how much radiation reaches the surface, possibly. But why is the Moon colder? Well, the reason that the Earth stays warmer is because it has an atmosphere. So the reason the Moon is cold temperature than the Earth is it does not have an atmosphere. Okay, and so why does... Okay, sorry, I was just interrupting. That was a fire alarm going off. So the reason the Moon has a colder temperature than the Earth is it does not have an atmosphere. Cool. So I'm just going to finish that sentence here because that's true. The Moon does get colder because it has no atmosphere. But I want to explain this a bit further. So I'm going to say the atmosphere on Earth, it absorbs heat radiation that is given off by the Earth's surface. Okay, and I'm just going to state here this is called the greenhouse effect. Okay, so the reason the Moon has a colder temperature than Earth, it does not have an atmosphere. The atmosphere on Earth absorbs the heat radiation that is given off by the Earth's surface. Oh, wait a minute. and surface and reflects it back. Or reflects it back? So the atmosphere on Earth absorbs heat radiations given off by the Earth's surface and reflects it back. This is called the greenhouse effect. Let's make that a capital G here, hey? And effect. So now what I've done is I've explained why the temperature on the moon is colder, because the temperature on the Earth is hotter because it has an atmosphere that keeps it warmer. Well, it's a reason why the Earth doesn't get super cold, I guess. So another reason that the moon might get cold. And this will explain why also the moon gets very hot. So the moon has a day that is 29.5 Earth days long. That means that it will have about 14 days of sunlight, then 14 days of darkness. Actually, I'm not sure that's entirely correct. It's closer to 15, isn't it? Let's go back and change that. So once we see that factor, and that was at the top there, we can start thinking about, okay, so what is this days? So that means that it's going to have about 15 days of heat radiation, right? So because it gets 15 days of heat radiation, the temperature will increase and increase to a higher point because it's got a longer time of the sun shining. So the temperature will get hotter because it has a longer period in the sun. So the surface, the moon, will have a longer continuous, it means in a row, period, that's a time, in with heat radiation hitting it. Allowing it to increase its temperature on the surface a lot higher than the Earth's. Okay, so we're at here. Temperature, the temperature of the moon. This means that it will have about 15 days of sunlight, 15 days of darkness. The surface of the moon will have a longer continuous period with, don't know why I put will there, heat radiation hitting it, allowing it to increase its, let's just write surface temperature because this is a key word. Temperature a lot higher than the Earth's. Okay, that's cool. So what we're saying here, we've put this sentence, we're linking it to the previous sentence, and we're saying that's the reason why it's hotter, right? So it's hotter because it has more time with the sunlight. It's I could write another sentence there and say, hey, it's colder because we have 15 days of darkness. So during that time, it will gradually get colder and colder and colder. But I'm just going to leave that at the moment. You just remember you could put another sentence there with that talking about how it gets incredibly cold. I've already mentioned it gets cold because it doesn't have an atmosphere. So I'm happy with that paragraph at the moment. We're going to put a wee bit of time into this light paragraph and then I will finish the video. Okay, so the light paragraph, again, we're really talking here. I'm just going to focus on the light to do with the day and night. We could also maybe talk to do with the degrees tilt. So since we've already mentioned how long the day is, I'm just going to say as the day or the time the moon receives light is 14 days. It may be hard for humans to regulate their sleep patterns. That means it might be hard for us to sleep. The 14 days of continuous darkness would make it difficult to grow plants naturally. Okay, so imagine if there was a clear day and we're trying to grow plants. The plants would have 14 days of continuous sunlight where they would be growing, and then they would have to deal with 14 days with no sun. Now, plants need sunlight to produce their food in a process called photosynthesis. So I should really write that down here because that's a really important process. Would make it difficult to grow plants naturally. Right, I'm just going to support this last statement with another scientific idea. So, make it difficult for plants to grow plants naturally. I'm just going to say for plants to grow, or plants grow using plants grow using a process called photosynthesis. Or plants carry out, let's just say, we don't need to say grow, plants carry out photosynthesis that to produce food. They can only do this when there is light. Many plants may not survive "14 days without producing food." So unless the plants have stored enough food, then they need to use food to stay alive, to respire, so they may not survive the 14 days. So they'd think that a plant would be adapted for a 12-hour night, and suddenly when it goes into a 14-hour night, they just wouldn't survive. So that's the kind of thing that I would put in my paragraphs. I would put down the data and put some supporting information. I might add at the end, some examples, some analogies or examples. So here, the greenhouse effect, we might say the atmosphere acts like a blanket. And after I've had a go at completing both of these paragraphs, I might come back and look at them later and just restructure them and make them better to read. And that's how I would approach solving this assessment problem. Okay, see you later.